Sing for me sweet lullabies. Bright nights of everlasting dark days. Bright nights and wearing the stain you made on me. And I wait and I wait and I wait and I wait for the bright nights to lead my way through the maze.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? How you guys doing tonight? It is a nice and chilly Sunday evening. Sunday, as a matter of fact. As a matter of fact, it's very cold by comparison to what did we have over this past week? 67-degree weather. It was absolutely beautiful out there. And I fear I'm about to break out a jacket. As a matter of fact, I did break out my jacket earlier today. Made me a little sad on the inside, but that's okay. We're not here to talk about the weather. We're not here to talk about sunshine or rain or snow. And there was snow today. I'm going to be joined here very briefly by Stephanie Soucek, and we're going to have a conversation about the Republican National Committee, or RNC, and the Bank Your Vote initiative. And this is going to be an interesting initiative. And I'm going to play a couple clips here as we're waiting for Stephanie to jump on board. And I want to get your guys' thoughts. I want to get your guys' feedback on this idea of voting early. Now, this is an initiative that's gotten a lot more focus, a lot more traction over the past, let's see here. Let's take a look. We're trying to, okay, yep, that looks good, but let's see, yeah. Try your iPad and copy and paste. Apple products are weird like that. All right. So, yeah, I would definitely love to get your guys' opinions, your thoughts on early voting. I know that this has been an initiative that was talked about during the 22 election cycle. This is something that ever since Brian Schimming, who's now the current chairman for RPW, he had been talking about this already shortly after he assumed chairmanship. And obviously, the RNC has made this a bigger priority. And there are advocates out there that are talking for it and trying to push. As a matter of fact, RPW, I believe Leslie Hubert, I believe her last name is. I know Leslie, I just can't remember her last name. I know she's been big on talking about this, and I believe she's working in conjunction with the RNC. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on this here. But as I do that, we're going to share some links here to talk about what Bank Your Vote is. And the first one that we're going to share tonight is from bankyourvote.com. Here it has former chairwoman Rhonda McDaniels. I always want to say McDonald. You know, it just flows better. But that's not her last name. I'm not here to disparage or disrespect anybody. But let's pull that up here and let us see what she has to say. It's about a minute and 45 seconds. Let's make sure you guys are getting the proper window. There we go. So let's let this play. Let's hear what you guys think. And then we'll have Stephanie joining us. She's in the green room right now. So let's have Rhonda say her piece.
Hi, I'm Rhonda McDaniel, chairwoman of the Republican National Committee. In 2022, we laid the groundwork for this critical election cycle by running the largest ever election integrity operation across the country. Over 80,000 Republicans served as poll watchers and poll workers. Our work to protect the vote will be supercharged in 2024 with an even larger team of grassroots leaders and more key lawsuits. The RNC is laser focused on beating Joe Biden and far left Democrats next November. And in addition to protecting the vote, we need you to bank your vote. To win close elections, we need to close the gap on pre-election day voting. That's why we're launching the Bank Your Vote initiative. Bank Your Vote encourages, educates, and activates Republican voters on when, where, and how to cast their ballot before Election Day. We made great strides in getting Republicans to cast their votes before Election Day in 2022, but now we must encourage more of our voters to request ballots or vote early in person, and we can't do that without you. Please spread the word about bankyourvote.com to your friends and family. Tell them to go to the site and find out when, where, and how to get their vote banked, and make 100% sure their voice is heard. Again, that is bankyourvote.com. If we don't vote early, we're giving the Democrats a head start. But when Republicans vote early, we win. And in 2024, we are going to hold the House, win back the Senate, and take the White House. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
All right. So we hear from the former chairwoman. Now, let us bring on board here Stephanie Soucek. Stephanie, how you doing tonight?
Good. I'm sorry it took me a while to get, I'm not going to use my iPad anymore, my iPhone. I've always had problems with that. So I'm just going to, for whatever reason, I'm just going to use my laptop, and that seems to work better. So we'll just stick with this.
And I know sometimes with and I use the platform Restream, and then of course you got StreamYard. It's kind of finicky when you're trying to work with like an Apple product, like an iPad or something like that. Generally, I think you have to copy and paste the URL into the URL. And I think you have to do it in Safari.
And I tried that too. I mean, I tried several things, and I'm like, okay, I give up.
Yeah.
You were waiting on me, and I'm like panicking.
You got to jump through like several hoops and, give a DNA
Oh my
scan.
goodness. So it's working now. So that's, at least there's that.
Fantastic.
Better late than never.
Yes. So welcome on board here. So we kind of got a little bit about notice I'm freezing up occasionally. We talked a little bit about, the Bank Your Vote. We had the former chairwoman over here kind of laying it out. Let's get into more detail about it, because I know you're an advocate of it. You've been going out talking to people on this here, and I certainly have some questions, because while I see some value in it, I'm more of a election day is a holiday, and short of the second coming of Christ, there's not very much that's going to stop me from going out and voting. So
you want me to make my pitch?
I yield the floor to you, and then we'll get into some articles here.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me on. And it's something where I've kind of, it's begun to make more and more sense to me as I've, number one, just looked at what we're dealing with in reality. There are certain things we cannot change right now. We cannot change certain laws in our state, at least. We're limited because we have a Democrat governor. We have an attorney general who's a Democrat. There have been numerous laws passed by the legislature, but we do not have quite what we need. We don't have a supermajority. And that's definitely going to change now with the maps being changed. So I'm I consider myself very conservative, but I really do try to be pragmatic and deal with the situation at hand.
Right.
When I talk to groups of people, a lot of times I'll use anecdotal stories or like our personal stories of why I've come to the conclusion that voting early, and not that it's not a matter of getting everybody to vote early. I mean, there's going to be people who still want to vote day of, and I appreciate that. But it's trying to get enough of an increase to compete with the Democrats on early vote, because for a few reasons. One is just the practical matter of, for example, I got COVID right before the 2020 election, like 4 days before. There's no way I was going out number one, I was just very out, like I was wiped out, but that was a little tricky situation at the time.
Sure.
And I happened to vote early because I'm a chief inspector. Typically I've been a chief inspector the past several years, and I'm so busy on election day processing absentee ballots that I don't want to forget, or just maybe I just don't have time, or it's hard to find the time. So I happened to vote early, and thankfully my vote was taken care of. My mom and stepdad one year during a presidential election got the flu. They couldn't go out and vote. They're at the age too where the flu really can wipe them out. So they
Right.
didn't vote that year. So there are those unexpected things that can come up just for any of us. Although, yeah, I mean, most of us, it come hell or high water, we're going to make a way, right? But there's a lot of people that aren't like us, that are not plugged in nearly as much as we are. They don't think of voting like as nearly, it's not as nearly of an important thing to them where, well, maybe I'll vote, or it's not in the front of their mind where they could forget. And I mean, and the thing is, if Democrats are spending weeks in places like Milwaukee, getting people to early vote, I remember many years ago thinking about how is that fair that Milwaukee is spending weeks getting people to vote, like where they can get them to vote and it's done. And then they move on to the next group of voters. And then they, each day they're getting more people to vote and they take care of those people. Then they can move on to the next group, and they're saving time and resources by being able to spend money and time on a new set of voters that they can go after. So each day is it's like an election day. Now, don't get me wrong. I am frustrated that it has become such a big thing, that early voting has become such a big thing. Like I said, I really do try to be pragmatic and practical with the situation at hand. So, it's for several reasons. I think we've talked about this before. It's been a while, but I've talked about how if we get certain people to vote early, we can then, focus our time on those lower propensity voters who don't necessarily vote all the time, or they're less likely to vote.
Right.
So we're kind of like, we're going to vote no matter what for every single election. There was actually a time where I didn't even think about voting in primaries as much. And I mean, it is strange to think.
Yeah.
But there was a time where primaries weren't as big of a deal. I was like, oh, it's all the same primary. They're all Republicans, they're all Democrats, whatever.
Yeah, it's like I'll take anybody with an R at that point. And it's funny because when you have that mindset, and I think that is an average mindset for most people. But once you kind of break out of that and you study a little bit more, you learn more, you get involved with the process, that changes so much.
Yes, absolutely. Adrienne just actually asked the question, which is interesting because I was going to point this out. She says, 100,001 must be reasons to vote in person day of. What percentage of requested absentee ballots are actually turned in? Have you never received a piece of mail, set it aside, and forgot to return it? I bet it happens way more often than an emergency would prevent someone from going to the polls. I'm actually really glad she mentioned that because Republicans actually have a higher return rate when they request. So Democrats have a higher request rate than we do, because we know that they tend to vote early by a lot more.
Sure.
But Republicans, when they do request it, they send it back in 90%. 90% of those that are requested are returned.
They'll actually return.
That's the average. That's on average. It's not perfect, but that's on average 90%.
Sure.
Which is higher than Democrats. So again, like Adrienne, I would just say, I'm just trying to deal with reality. And I would say this, one and really important part, because I care a lot about election integrity. I had concerns about what happened in 2020. I always remind people, we really improved some things from 2020 to 2022. And you can see that Ron Johnson was able to win. Now it was close, but if the Democrats would have wanted to take anybody out in the country, he would have been, he was like a top target in a swing state. And he's kind of controversial. I love him, but in a swing state and how he is, and he won. I think he was an incumbent. Mandela Barnes wasn't a great candidate, obviously.
It's horrible. Right.
Right, which that helped. But my whole point is he didn't lose because of fraud. Now, was fraud committed? I don't know. I'm sure the Democrats tried. But the point is he was still able to win statewide. So just to point out, we submitted 5,000 poll workers in 2022. In 2024, or rather at the end of 2023, we submitted as a party across the state 5,500 poll workers. And I can tell you, I have personally dealt with clerks who weren't going to use our the names I submitted because they were just outside of the, I was basically trying to find people for every part in our county, every municipality. Well, some places had more than enough and others didn't have any. So I asked a few people, would you be willing to work outside of your precinct or your polling place? And they said, sure. Well, by law, you can do that. You don't have to live in the municipality in order to be a poll worker there. You just have to be in the county. So at first, those clerks weren't going to be allowing that. But then our election integrity guy, Mike, I'm going blank now. I totally know Mike, but he called the clerks and worked it out where, okay, they're going to use those names now because by law they need to use those names.
As long as they're in the same county.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So, there was a lot of that going on across the state. Obviously, there were some clerks that are being a little more difficult about it, but overall, a lot of those names, and we've been following up with people. Did you hear back from your municipal clerk? There's just been a lot of communication on that. So we want good people that we trust helping facilitate the elections. And the next step is now finding poll watchers or election observers.
Mhm.
So that's, I like to bring up the point in Milwaukee. We had, election workers, but we also had poll observers or election observers stay there. We've learned from 2020, okay, what to look for, what to be, on notice about. And they stayed there till the bitter end. And, we didn't have a 3 a.m. ballot dump, which that always was,
happen all the
whenever
time.
people
But
think about it, it just doesn't give a lot of confidence when that happens. So whatever people think of that, it's nice when you can get everything turned in early in the evening enough. And okay. So, and I mean, obviously they were dragging out a little bit in some ways with Ron Johnson's race because they didn't want to admit that he had won. And I was kind of like so nervous that it was hard to sleep for me because I'm like, oh dear Lord, please. Like, I don't want to find out like, oh, some ballots were, appeared or what, I'm like, okay, he won. And they're dragging their feet on announcing it. So all that to say, there have been a lot of efforts to address what happened in 2020. It was certainly better and cleaner in 2022 than it was in 2020. They used COVID to just pull all sorts of stuff. They didn't have COVID in 2022 to use as much, And 2024, I don't know what they're going to try. Like, I don't know.
I'm not putting anything past anybody, and that's the thing, and that's why, now I have some questions on this bank your vote initiative, because I'm a big backer in the idea that, it should be day one elections. The idea that you can absentee ballot just, on a whim, to me is a bit of nonsense in the sense that, what do we have, like a full election season now?
I know, it's annoying.
I think
Yeah, I mean, it is
pushed
annoying.
enough. If this gets pushed enough, they'll make it a 3-month cycle, which, it's like, damn, it's another season in the year.
It's silly that it's so drawn out.
Right.
Again, I mean, so that's where I go, well, what can we do about it right now?
Right.
Maybe in some states, depending on who's in power, some states maybe have adjusted things or changed. I don't know. I mean, I haven't paid attention to every state, but in Wisconsin, at least, like I always ask people, okay, what should we do like that we can practically do to address like where we can get the governor to sign? He's already like vetoed every legislation that has tried to make things more secure. They want to go after voter ID, which that'll be on the ballot. That'll be a constitutional amendment on the ballot in November. By the way, just because I'm thinking of right now, on the ballot in April, the April 2nd ballot there are 2 referendum questions that are meant to ban things like Zuckerbucks or anything like it. So private money being used, private special interest money being used to facilitate our elections. We want to vote yes to ban that.
Right.
We want to vote yes to ban special interest organizations or people from helping facilitate the elections when they have no business doing that. I would say it's against the law already, but they it's like they try to find some wiggle room or something. So they're
Well,
trying
and
to
whoever
solidify.
interprets the law is the one who's going to decide whether it's legal or not legal.
Right, exactly. So that's why if we're putting it to a vote to the people, and so we really need to make sure people are aware of that and that I mean, in fact, I've been knocking on doors and calling people and doing what I can to inform people that that's on the ballot, and I inform them what it means. So that is another step in the right direction, but we have to make sure it passes.
Right.
So anyways, yeah, I've been talking a lot. So
No. It's all good. It's all good. So let me ask you this here, and this is one of the issues I think I have with early voting and the like that's been proposed here, is the fact that let's say that you have a million Republican voters, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, man, we got to, bank your vote, get out there early, you know, get a jump on things. The problem I'm seeing, and maybe I'm just seeing it through my lens, I'm not seeing enough initiative from the county parties, or Republicans as a whole. And, not to jump on the bandwagon of bashing RPW, but if we're not growing membership, if we're not growing people that are willing to vote Republican, all I'm seeing is like, okay, you got that million voters. So we're just shifting how many voters are going to be voting early versus growing that number of people that are going to vote day of.
Sure. Well, that's a good point. I would say this. I mean, so in my new position, which I never planned on doing, um, this is like really out
It
of my
just
comfort zone.
happens.
I'm like not like it's out of my comfort zone. I'm not one to like actually be in people's faces and be like really pushy.
Yeah.
Like I want people to want to do stuff. So I try to approach it a certain way, but I've tried to convince people in like a non-threatening way. So um but I'll just say this, like in my position, part of what we're trying to do is like I had people at a gun show the other, I don't know if it was 2 Sundays ago, I think, in De Pere,
Mm,
getting people engaged to sign a petition, getting people to, ask them if they're registered to vote. We're trying to find those like-minded individuals who maybe don't either always vote or maybe they just don't vote. And we're trying to show them like, hey, if this is what's important to you, there's only one party who supports your right to bear arms. I mean, it's really a stark contrast these days with how the Democrats are constantly trying to undermine our Second Amendment rights. So, we're trying to meet people um, in different venues, and that's nothing necessarily totally new. But I would say this: we need volunteers because do you know who Kimberly, of course I forget her last name now because on Facebook it's Kimberly Ann. I don't know if you know Kimberly Ann, but she's
yes,
in Madison. Okay.
yes.
So I love her. She's great. So um she posted a while ago, not too long ago, about how some people really like to complain, but and that's fine. I get it. We're frustrated, but then people don't want to volunteer and they don't want to offer, like they don't want to help out. Like they're not going to want to go to a gun show. They're not going to want to help organize an event or knock on doors like I've been doing. Like
Right.
I'm talking to voters and I've convinced them at the door to vote for the candidates I'm supporting locally. So that's like real stuff. Like that's a real making a difference where you're talking to people at the doors, you're finding out what's important to them, you're engaging with them, but it is hard to find people willing to do that. And I don't know if it's because people are afraid or it's just work. And it is work. I'm tired, it is work. So I don't know what the answer is to get more people, to want to do that kind of stuff. I just
Mhm.
make the point how important it is to engage people. And, because we can all complain, but if we're not out there trying to talk to people in our communities, are we getting anybody else on board?
Right.
Um, so it's that, and yeah, it's messaging. Obviously, that's all part of it. Like, how are we going to connect and relate to people, to get them to, come to the table or get them to be open to what, we offer as a party, and
Mhm.
saying that knowing that there's no perfect, party and there's no perfect. I don't pretend to have the answers for everything.
Right.
We're not all going to agree on everything, but I would say that the Democrat Party is pretty far out there these days, and they don't represent. They're so out of touch. They do not represent the average American. As much as they say they do, they don't. And so, it's a lot of different facets, I think, where some of it is messaging, some of it is getting out there in the community, volunteering, helping out with the county party, or you know what, there's other organizations too. It doesn't have to be through the party. It can be, there's a lot of different conservative organizations that people can get involved with. So, whatever area you feel like you fit in, I said this last night at the Brown County party. I said, it's going to happen on the ground. Like online, I get like, we engage online, and this stuff is important. I think this stuff is important, talking on podcasts
Sure.
and stuff. It's part of it, but, reaching people where they're at, and, everybody asking, what can I do? What can I do to help actually do something that's going to make a difference in this election cycle in this year? And I feel like there's always something for somebody to do. It's just a matter of finding out where people can fit in, and what they're good at, or what they
Right.
want to help with.
I
So
think the
that's
hard part for people, especially those get newly involved into, a county party or any particular group for that matter, it's getting out of your comfort zone. Like I
oh,
would be
absolutely. Yep.
horrible door knocking. Um, it's like,
Well,
slam a door in your
Ed, you
face.
should come with me sometime. We'll do door knocking, and I do tell people, I'm like, if you want to go with someone, I can appreciate that. And believe me, like,
Right.
it's not something, like, again, a lot of this stuff is out of my comfort zone. So, but what's interesting is I've actually had pretty good interactions the past couple of times this past week.
Mm.
Yesterday, and then earlier in the week when it was really nice out, I went. And, I mean, I don't know if it was just my friendly demeanor or what, but people,
You're not intimidating. That's what remember. It's
well,
that.
that probably helps. So, and I was just really like, I wasn't awkward or pushy. I just
Yeah.
was like, hey, like, I'm volunteering for some local candidates, and that helps because I know the people too. It always helps if it's easier if you know someone to say like, hey, I'm supporting so and so, and I know them, and
Yeah.
so I'll just kind of feel it out and say like, have you been paying attention to the race at all for the local races or for city council or whatever? And I just kind of engage them that way, and I just kind of play it by ear. I don't get in people's faces or make it awkward. So just
Yeah, and
really
I
force
think
the
that's
conversation.
even when you get a phone call from people, it's like the worst approach to take because it's like, man, you're coming to my phone line, you're coming to my door. So yeah, obviously you don't want to get in people's faces and make some type of
Oh, sure.
hostile environment. But I'm going to
Yeah.
double back. You're going on the bank your vote. I know
Yep.
one of the biggest reasons, like Brian Schimming would talk about it oftentimes when he's at various county parties. Um, he would talk about the fact that one of the reasons that they want to really focus in on this initiative is it comes down to money. The idea that, what, if they know, say you and I, we've already voted and they know that we voted,
Mhm.
well, that's less junk mail for us. That's less,
They can stop spending money
advocacy
on you
mail.
to try to reach.
Right.
Yeah, so it's shifting funds. I mean, that is part of it. It is a practical thing where you no longer have to send texts or, and the thing is what people don't understand, like it's actually kind of a complex, like there's a science to it
Mm,
because for you and me, like we don't need to be bugged that much, but there are certain people that it's kind of like when you see those ads, how like people don't like negative ads, and I personally don't, they're annoying.
right.
But you know why people use them is because they work. Like, you know,
Right.
so, depending on the type, if it's over the top, it can backfire. But you see an ad enough about something, it takes a lot of time sometimes
Hmm.
to hit somebody into. So it's kind of the same thing with like getting information to people on voting and who to vote for. The attention span of people is so short. It is so short these days. And so it's kind of like you do have to try to get to people with information, not just like twice, it's many different ways and many different times. And so if you don't have to bother that person anymore, you don't have to spend anything on, flyers, text,
Right.
digital, although I don't know how that works with digital, like if it stops showing up in someone's feed. That's a good question. But digital is another way. In fact, I just saw Joe Biden. I was watching a movie tonight, and there was a Joe Biden ad, And then there was Americans for Prosperity
Yeah.
right after it. And I'm like, oh, yay. Like Americans for Prosperity is doing something opposite of what Biden just said. So it's a matter of saving money. And again, the Democrats, I can go back to like how I remember many years ago before. And this is, I mean, I was annoyed with early voting. Like, and I would like it to be less of a thing if we could shift that back. But right
Oh,
now,
absolutely.
it's just, it is what it is. So I'd be like, how is that fair that Milwaukee is like, they're like working on people like voting early for like weeks, you know? And so their time and their research, they only have so many volunteers, I'm sure, that are doing that. That are out talking to people and getting them to vote. You know, so time, you know, you have limited resources, limited time to reach however many people. And so it's just really shifting your resources after you can get those people their vote in the bank, you know?
Well, I think there's a stark difference between how Republicans do things and how Democrats do things. And
Yeah.
one, I think, Democrats' ground game is probably second to none. And a lot of that has to do with the fact of wherever they operate, these are major metropolitan areas, where people, I
Mhm.
mean, you can take 1 square mile and have what? A few thousand people living there. Meanwhile,
Yep.
you come up over here by my neck of the woods. Well, to get a few thousand people, I mean, you need to traverse 10 to 15 miles in maybe
You
3
need
or
to
4
drive
towns in
around in your
between.
car and
Right, because not
yeah,
everybody's
it's not
living on
knocking on
top of a
doors. Yeah,
right,
actually yesterday, it's funny you say that because yesterday I was on a stretch um, in Sturgeon Bay that was like the house was actually a little more spread out. So I was literally like getting in my car, driving a little bit, and then getting out. It was kind of a pain.
right,
So I mean, that's a practical challenge, I think, is that it's not exactly the same. Um, it's a little bit, you have to approach it a little differently because those highly densely populated areas are, they're more Democrat and it's more ripe for the picking. It's easier to just
right.
get through the doors quickly and oh,
Well, right. I mean,
you're
you're in the
glitching a
city. I
little
mean, you
bit.
can go to an apartment complex, knock on all the doors, Milwaukee or Madison. Um, so I
Yep.
certainly see that. This is, and I could be wrong about this, but is this a Republicans trying to get with that program, get with making a better ground game, not just, and I think there was an article we were just looking at from Laura Trump where she was talking about, ballot harvest where that's legal. Now, that is a sore spot because if you go back to the 2022 election cycle, that was something that I believe candidate Kevin Nicholson was saying outright, no, it's not legal. Rebecca Clayfish was saying, no, this is legal. And there's some gray area in there.
It's not legal in the sense that in Wisconsin, you can't have a third party, you can't have another person return your ballot. You do have to be the voter. In fact,
Mhm.
in Green Bay, there was a lawsuit because there was an election observer named Janet Angus who was a poll observer, and she saw somebody come in with 2 ballots, give it to the clerk, and she said, wait, you can't do that. Like, it has to be the voter.
Right.
Well, there was a complaint filed or whatever, and then there was a back and forth in court. And unfortunately, the city clerk, who's not she's a Democrat, she went
Mhm.
after Janet and tried to cause problems for her. Well, thankfully, the lawsuit was settled, and Janet ended up winning because the judge said, basically said that the city was in the wrong for how they handled things. So, that was a win, and that was somebody returning 2 ballots, and one of them wasn't theirs, obviously. So it's not supposed. We're
Right.
not supposed to be now. um, some people think ballot harvesting is like going door to door and getting people's ballots, like which I mean, which it is, but it's kind of like I think people misunderstand what ballot harvesting is. True ballot harvesting is where third parties are collecting ballots. That's not legal in Wisconsin.
Right.
However, I would say this: Democrats get people to vote by mail a lot, and they also and they've done some illegal stuff. I mean, they've done the whole voting ban, which was banned recently in Racine. It takes
Well, yeah, what do they have voting in the park
Yeah, like,
and
oh, they're
like,
gonna
there
go
was some
around an event
spirit
in city
initiative.
and like collect ballots. It's like, wait a second, how is that legal? So I mean,
Yeah,
finally,
there was some initiative they did several years ago where they were like giving out cigarettes to people who were voting, and it was like,
yeah,
uh, you're giving, isn't that illegal? But again, everything's legal unless you're caught.
right, right. Well, and so I think that, I mean, that is the challenge we have, where we have to be, and even when we are on top of things, these lawsuits take how long to get worked out. And
Right.
now, I mean, not that the U or the Wisconsin Supreme Court will take everything up, but um it's, more than likely, if it's an election integrity issue, we can't really trust that the Wisconsin Supreme Court's going to uphold the law, So,
Yep.
that is a challenge, but it's, again, I think we just have to try to be, I think as conservatives, we can be, and it can be a good thing. We can be stubborn in a good way sometimes, but we're conservative and we're not, it's like, we like tradition. We like what we're used to. It's like, we don't want to change the way we're doing things, except for
Mhm.
when the circumstances might call for it, even temporarily. I mean,
Right.
and you listen, if I shared that article with you that quoted Laura Trump. I mean,
Yeah, let's pull
yeah,
that
if you
up
want to
there.
pull it up there and we can share what she said. Uh,
And Laura Trump is now the vice
yeah, she's
chair
the co-chair of the
for
RNC,
the RNC.
and Michael Watley's the
Yeah,
new chair.
co-chair.
Yep.
Let's see. We're gonna pause this here. I always hate it with it. Coughs are contagious. Wow.
Even through a screen, apparently.
No kidding, man. All right. Thank you very much. All right, here we go. Let's make sure we got this here. Make sure everything's showing. Oh, wait, beautiful. There we go. So this is from the Washington Examiner. Laura Trump promises legal ballot harvesting be part of the RNC's new strategy. So let's break this down here. Newly elected RNC co-chair Laura Trump said that it's time for the RNC to up its game and compete with more strategy against the Democrats. We've been playing checkers, and the Democrats have been playing chess, Trump told the Washington Examiner. Trump was elected on Friday to replace Drew McKissick. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Maybe.
Close enough. Michael Watley, the former chairman of the North Carolina GOP, replaced outgoing RNC chair Rhonda McDaniel. Let's see here. Unfortunately, we don't have one day of voting. We don't have paper ballots. We don't have voter ID everywhere. So we have to play with the hand that we're dealt. And that's a very, very we can, and it's funny because I remember, and I'm sure you remember this too, during the 2022 election cycle, it was very contentious, very, conservatives fighting conservatives. It got to be very ridiculous. And I think some people missed the boat. They didn't get the idea that if we don't win seats, if we don't try to get that super majority, if we don't get both chambers and the executive branch and everything within the executive branch, if you don't win elections, you won't have power. And if you don't have power, you can't make the changes you want to make. And I was amazed at how many people were willing to let everything burn down just to prove a point.
Yeah, there are some people like that.
Absolutely amazed.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you can't, I mean, it's just kind of common sense that if you don't find a way to win, like, you have to position yourself to win so that you can actually make the changes, right? So we
Mhm.
can't, I mean, again, like, we're not in a position right now to like change all the laws. And frankly,
Right.
we do have actually pretty good laws in the books. But there's like, they try to find those loopholes or wiggle room, or they just didn't follow the laws. I mean, there was some
Absolutely.
of that. So, it's like, I tell people, like, as a chief inspector, I had like a 3-hour training. I think it was like a month ago. And so it was like intense on being a chief inspector. And I'm like, man, there are a lot of laws. There's a lot of checks and balances. If everybody follows the laws and the rules, we should be fine. But that's always the key, is making sure things are enforced, making sure that there are people in
Right.
place that are facilitating the elections properly. And I think, there's a lot of great clerks across our state. So I think I have a really great city clerk. Actually maybe a chief inspector. So, there's a lot of good people. There's obviously
Certainly.
some areas we are more concerned about than others. And so that's where we really have to try to get, the manpower in there and on the ground and through poll workers and poll observers and lawyers and all that. So I feel like there's a very robust, excuse me, my throat was getting kind of scratchy. So I'm like, I have to
Oh,
get a cough drop.
that's why I always have the red victory cup is always
There you
here
go.
just because of that. Trust me.
Right. So
Plus, I like my soda really cold, so there's
okay.
that.
But
I want to get to this here
Yeah.
real quick because there's a comment here that Laura Trump made, and she was talking about we have to deal with the hand that we're
Yeah.
dealt. She states in here, excuse me. See,
I'm sorry.
oh man,
I'm passing
maybe
it
I
on
need a
to
cough drop. But she also starts talking about early voting and mail-in where possible. She states that way we have votes banked as we head into election day, and we're not playing catch up on November 5th with Democrats. We need to do legal ballot harvesting, something that's never been done by the RNC. But I can promise you that will be a huge part of what we're planning, she added. And then come election day, you'll see that I think it's not about having watchers. It's about having trained poll watchers and lawyers at locations around the country as necessary. And these are the people who will be trained and be able to physically count how many ballots are coming in and how many ballots are going out.
Yeah.
I think that was the comment you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And actually we are doing, and all the county parties should be getting this stuff. Well, I'm a county party chair, so I know, we are, but there's online trainings for anybody that signs up to be a poll watcher, excuse me, so that they can know what the laws are, they can know what to look for. And every state's different. So you have to cater, you have to tailor it to each state. So you're going to have some states where, somebody who's not the voter can apparently turn it in, turn the ballot in, turn somebody else's ballot in. Now, I will say this, in California, I wish I had a story on it, but I just remember reading some time ago that in California, they were successful. Republicans were successful with several seats that, because they ballot harvested. They actually, literally, because that's in California, you can do that. They were successful in winning those seats, and they credit basically being able to compete with the Democrats in ballot harvesting. Now, again, all this stuff, I'm not saying I don't like it, because voting to me should be a sacred thing that the voter has an investment in, where it's not just
correct,
willy-nilly and somebody's going to hold my hand to fill out the ballot practically. I think it should mean something. So it does annoy me what it's turned into. I just know we can cross our arms and be stubborn and just say, this isn't fair. And then just let the Democrats keep doing what they're doing. Every time, it's funny because some of the people that say, well, we need to be doing what the Democrats are doing. We're playing, Laura Trump said, well, we've been playing checkers and they're playing chess. But then when you suggest doing things that the Democrats are doing, then people get all upset about it. But I'm like, well, wait, which is it? Are we going to compete with the Democrats and do what they're doing and copy what they're doing? And I'm not saying be unethical or illegal. I'm saying compete with them at a similar level of some of what they're doing, at least.
Well, clearly they're doing something that works. And I think this is, one you talked about this earlier, and I think this is a very astute observation in that if as conservatives, we're very independent. We don't like being told what to do. We don't like group mentality. We don't like mob mentality, and oftentimes we will push back against our own because we don't want to be told what to do.
Right.
But part of the problem is that if you look at what Democrats do so well is they fall in line. And I use that word intentionally, that phrase, fall in line, because people accuse RPW of saying, you people, you need to fall in line with us. while they're at the same time doing the exact same thing, because if you don't fall in line with their particular rigid ideology
Mhm.
on a particular issue or set of issues, well, then you're not falling in line. And I think there's a bit of nonsense in that, because we don't need to be so in lockstep, circle the wagons like Democrats do, but you could learn a thing or two, because if they're winning elections, it's very easy to blame RPW, because
You know what?
who's really there to punch back? It's another thing to take accountability within your own county party
Mhm.
system or within yourself and your cohort of
Yep.
people. Because if you're not taking that accountability, like, well, what could I have done? What could I have done to influence
Sure.
more? Whether it's online, your circle of friends, people things like that. And I don't think people take enough of that into account.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, on our side, for whatever reason, like, we tend to, I don't know, it's like every time there's, like, a bloody primary, I mean, I like to think we've learned from it. I actually have to say this, I was at the Brown County Lincoln Day dinner last night, or Lincoln Reagan dinner. It was a really good,
Hmm.
great event. Brandon Struck was there from the Walkaway Movement. He did a great job, and
Yep.
we heard from several candidates. And Stacey Klein, she had been running for the U.S. Senate.
Did she finally make the
She
announcement?
decided to step down from running for the U.S. Senate, but she found us an assembly. I believe it was assembly. I don't think it was Senate. I think it was the
Hmm.
assembly seat that, because of the maps changing, um, she
Yep.
said at this time it just makes, number one, it makes more sense for her given the situation to pursue that, and she also wants to call people to unity. I mean, I just give her a lot of credit for that, because um, it's easy to just, not easy, but it's harder to, like, admit to yourself, like, okay, this is where things are at right now. And I think sometimes certain candidates on our side need to admit, um, the reality of the situation, and think about doing what's best for the party. And again, I'm not saying,
Yep.
like you said, I'm not saying you have to walk lockstep. We're all going to have differences of opinion, and that's the thing. Unity isn't always agreeing. It's understanding that we're on the same team, and it's being able to set differences aside when we need to come together to fight back against what the Democrats are doing, and to fight together to win. And the
Yeah.
challenge is just trying to get us all on the same page as much as we can, you know.
Yeah. And I've had a chance to speak with Stacy on several occasions. I met
Yeah,
her several
she's a
weeks
great
ago.
person.
Um, oh, she's absolutely wonderful. She tells, her story very
Hmm.
well. Her background as a financial advisor, I think, gives her key insight into the economic matters that are facing everyone here in the state of Wisconsin. And I would even gather elsewhere. So to know that she's going to be working, trying to get that assembly
Hmm.
seat, I think that she would be a great candidate. And again, this is one of those things where I think for anybody, if you're tired of sitting on the sidelines and you want to see some change, there's a number of things you can
Hmm.
do. Join a county party, write letters, start your own podcast,
Help get signs up. I
run
mean,
for
there's
an
some simple
office.
things that don't require you to, like, confront
Mhm.
as much, like, because I totally get it. Like, I've had to overcome a lot of insecurity and fear of
Sure.
confrontation, and I'm not even a confrontation. People might laugh at that, but I'm not actually really a confrontational person. I really, I mean, I will fiercely defend what I believe, but when I approach people, I'm always, diplomacy is my first go-to. Like, and being like, making people feel comfortable, like trying to meet them where they're at. Like I said, when I was talking at the doors, it's like I'm not coming hard at people. I'm trying to figure out, like, feel them out a little bit, and just see if I can subtly open the conversation. And because that, I think, is more effective, obviously, than just beating someone over the head, so, or yelling at them.
Well, and that generally tends to have, a lot of pushback from people, because it's like if you're coming at me telling me, if you don't do this, if you don't vote Democrat, then you ain't black.
Yeah, I mean, that's not, I mean, that I can imagine.
You're gaslighting
Right,
people.
and I think, I mean, sometimes the Democrats actually do push too hard, and then it backfires on them. So, they do make their mistakes. And you know what? The good news, there is some good news. I feel like there is a shift happening. I'm seeing more and more people from the Black community, Hispanics are leaving the Democrat
Yeah.
Party. There are people, I've heard some people say, well, I'm not to the point where I can vote for Trump. I voted for Biden, or I vote Democrat, but I just going to leave that box blank this time. So there is somewhat of a shift. There's people, I think they're feeling enough of the personal pain, because that's a lot of times what it
Hmm.
takes, unfortunately, for things to get really bad and people wake up because it's affecting them personally. When it's somebody else's problem, it's different, but when it's your problem.
Well, and that's, and I'm very interested to see what happens here on March 20th when the Federal Reserve comes, and I don't want to get too far into that, but I mean, consumer price index was just released. The numbers weren't exactly what they wanted them to be. PPI, producer price index, same thing. And, in various markets, both the stock market, cryptocurrency market on Friday, we saw, kind of a bloodbath in those
You can't say the
markets.
word bloodbath.
Things are, oh, we
I mean,
can't.
did you read about the
Oh,
Trump
darn.
comment? I'm
Oh,
sorry, I'm
yes,
just
yes,
joking,
yes. I
but
saw, I
you
saw
can't
that.
say
I was
that
like,
word.
yeah.
I'm totally
I was
kidding,
like,
but
oh no,
I just wanted to joke.
yeah, no, 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 no. Yeah, that's probably gonna be the next thing that's gonna be
And
like
I have to be
filtered,
careful what I say too. Just, I mean, I think you know that, but like, because in my position,
clearly.
I can't be shooting my mouth off and just saying what
Well, I think we're looking at this from an analytical
Oh,
lens
very much so.
because what we're doing here is, we're taking a look at these things that affect these are kitchen table
Mhm.
issues. So when I see they say, well, inflation's down to 3.7%. But is it? Is it really? I mean, I guess it is when you take out the three biggest heavy hitters,
Yeah, I
right?
don't know how they.
Housing, energy, food. You take that out, yeah, inflation's gone down quite a bit.
Yeah,
But
I'm not feeling the
I would
whatever that is, 7%.
no.
It's.
I went to Piggly Wiggly on
Mhm.
Friday, and they had a sale on ribeye steak, 15.99.
Oh,
I wow, that's a sale. Okay, this is not the same world that we were living in a month ago. But I think that you're seeing a lot of people though, they're having those issues. And when I go back to 2020, and some people feel free to argue with me about this, but Trump lost because he was anti-elected. You had the mainstream media working against him, and Democrats went full bore where we know everything that they've done. And he was anti-elected. People didn't really vote for Biden. They voted against Trump. And I got to wonder here in 24, are people going to be voting against Biden? And not so much for Trump and the people and that, like you said, I think there's going to be a good number of people that just, I can't vote for any of them. You know what? I'm
sure.
out.
Well, and I think that the Republicans have. I really do feel it, and I understand. There's some people who still on our side that don't like Trump. Okay, I get that, but I think it's
Yeah.
worse on the Democrats. I think the Democrats have a bigger problem because his his approval ratings are in the tank, and you can't.
Oh my God. Aren't they like
It's
mid
very
30s now?
hard to overcome in an election when it's in an election year and your numbers are that low. I mean, I'm not going to take
Mhm.
anything for granted. I'm not. This is not in the bag. This is not. I'm not going to take anything for granted. But I'm just saying, I think the Democrats they do have a problem on their hands, and they're trying to manage it the best they can. But um, I think there's more energy and passion on our side for Trump by the people who really strongly
Yeah.
support him than anybody on the Democrat side for Biden. I mean, it's weird to think that is there a group of people on that side that are like passionately like they love Biden? Like maybe I just find that hard to
I
believe.
wonder that because I have yet to see a Biden 24 or sticker out
Yeah,
there.
there's just
I haven't seen anything like Kamala,
yeah. I mean, if I feel
nothing
like if
like
it
that.
is, it's like is that just like they have to put on a show, put on a face and pretend to be really excited. I don't know. I just it's hard to believe
Right.
that people would be like really excited on their side. So they're doing what they can to kind of manage the situation, but I do feel like there's more intensity on our side. And I think, I mean, there's a lot of things at play. There
Right.
is competing with the Democrats. Um, I think with voting, like early voting, I think that election integrity is a big thing. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of stuff we've done to try to remedy. And again, poll workers are actually a really big deal. I mean, I think we had
Mhm.
1,000 in 2020. So to have 5,000 in 2022, that was 5 times more, and then 5,500, so even a little bit more in 2024. That's important. You have
And this is throughout the
Yeah,
entire
throughout the
state,
entire
right?
state. So I think we have 40, I
Yeah.
think I submitted 40 people, and it was a lot of work. I mean, people, that's the thing. When
Mhm.
people say the party's not doing anything, I'm like day in, day out. Now, I understand we've talked about this. Certain county parties are doing more than maybe others.
Some are
Right.
stronger than
But the
others, no
tools
doubt.
are there, and I'm using all the tools I can to get things in place, to do things that are effective, and to get more people involved to help. And so I'm doing what I can, but there's a lot that has been done that it's not in the news. I mean, it's not like
No,
I mean, so we don't
and
hear
it's
about all this
about
stuff necessarily, but I can just say I live it every day. And so I always tell people, like, hey, if you want to ask me what's going on about something, just ask and I'll tell you if something's being done about it or not. Like, I can say, oh, you know what, that's a good idea. And sometimes I say, how can you help with that idea? Because people have ideas, but
well,
we
no,
need people
great
to help
question.
with those ideas.
Well, I think that's a great question. It's like, okay, well, what do we do here? Well, how do you want to help?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to sit back and complain
Hmm.
and, just kind of be and
Yeah.
moan. But what how can you be a part of the
There was
solution?
it just reminds me of in 2022. No, I'm sorry, it was 2023. It was during the Supreme Court race. And
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
had reached out and was complaining about something about, why isn't Brian Schimming doing something? And I go, well, he's got a million things going on, but I said, here, I'll take care of it. So I literally like called somebody that I knew was a part of this group, and I said, hey, can you get this set up? And they're like, hey, that's a great idea. Like, yeah, thanks for bringing that up to me. And so, at that point, I left it up to them. That was their group, their thing.
Hmm.
But I'm like, that took me like a couple minutes where I'm like, I'll
Right.
call. Like, I'm just like, oh yeah, I'll take care of it, because it's, again, it's easy to complain. I think some people sometimes just want somebody to blame and point to. And there's a time to, I get the
Hmm.
accountability thing, but again, what are people as individuals doing themselves? And I think if you're doing something, then you have a little bit more right to complain at times. Or if you have ideas, that's great.
Sure.
But just sometimes people need to understand, like, sometimes we also need more people helping out with certain things. So that's part of it too. And I'm not trying to, I feel like I'm being like, I don't want to lecture people. I understand we all have wives. We all have
No.
wives. I get it. Like, I'm,
Yep.
like, I don't even know how I'm like, I mean, I'm tired. Like, I'm doing a lot. Um,
I know there's only so many hours
yeah,
in the
there's
day
only so
to
many
actually
hours.
work with on top of needing to sleep. But
Right.
yeah,
And I've got my son, and I homeschool my son, and there's other things that are going on. So, I get it. Like, I understand. Sometimes I just want to ask people, like, just think about what our founding fathers like sacrificed and what they gave up, and the comfort of their homes. They, um, don't lecture Brian. Oh, hey, Brian. Brian's watching now. Still managed to lecture people. I usually don't
well, you have
lecture
a
people.
habit
I'm
of
actually
doing that.
very like, I don't lecture people, but I think I've just been like working a lot where I'm like, I can get tired, and then I'm like, we need more people to help. um,
Well, I think that's a struggle that especially again, going back to the conservative side of things, I think, again, because we're so independent, we sit around and, guilty of this myself, where I will put someone on blast, and it was like, well, what are you doing to remedy the situation? Now, I think it's one thing to sit behind a microphone and try to have these conversations with people, but if it's not constructive, then
right.
it's like you're just kind of have this stream of thought that is just ranting, and I was guilty of that for the longest
I was
time.
too.
I will admit to that.
I actually was joking how last night when I spoke, I was able to speak briefly to the crowd at the Lincoln dinner. And I
Mhm.
said, I was trying to encourage people to get involved. And I was like, before I got involved in 2012, I would watch the news and then just rant to people. And I built on
Right.
Facebook, and that was what I would do. And then at some point I was like, what am I doing? Like, like literally, what am I doing?
You're raising your blood
Yeah,
pressure is
I'm
what you're
getting
doing.
frustrated. I mean, that's the other thing I would say is if people get involved, like, there's something really healthy about taking your passion and any frustration and putting it to use where you're making a difference versus just bottling it
Yes.
up or just venting all the time in anger. Like when you can actually do something, it's like a release. It's like it's satisfying to know like, okay, like I'm doing something. And it feels good to be able it gives you some sense of control, like, okay, I can actually do something
Mhm.
to hopefully affect change. And so I think, that's what I just encourage people, like when they get frustrated, like, okay, figure out what can you do, what can you help with, even if it's a small thing. Like every little small
Yeah.
thing can be you know like 20 small things put together, which makes a huge difference if you've got like everybody
Well,
doing
it's a
something.
grain of sand. It's a grain of sand in the heap. And when I look at it, from my perspective, that's why I like having these conversations. That's why I like to, have various candidates come on so we can talk these things through and do it in a constructive manner. Now, granted, you can pull up a number of my episodes and, it gets all testy. But, I have two different types of episodes I run. I have very calm, very
Like this.
even keel like this. And then like I'll have one from like, I don't know, 2 weeks ago where it was me, Orlando, Maurice Delk, and it was like,
A free for all.
do not yeah, it was like not safe for work
Yeah, I couldn't
content.
be on that then
Um
probably. This is
no,
safe
no,
for me to
you
be
I
on.
would not I would not allow you to
Right.
be on that one. That was like late night grown folk talk. But, I run both sides of the fence. I mean, there's a reason, of course, because I think you can communicate a particular way, reach a certain group of people, and then
Yeah.
you can communicate another way and reach a totally different other set
Yep.
of people.
I agree.
Because those two worlds don't necessarily cross. But, that's like I said, I like to have these conversations. I like to bring forth these issues, this bank your vote initiative, talk more on that, because people are going to be very steadfast in, no, I don't believe in, absentee ballot voting. Well, then don't do it.
Yeah.
But also, don't try to salt up what people are actually doing.
Right. Well, and I talked to there was like people at the tables I was, going and talking to, and there was one guy who like was very firm. He was nice, but he was very firm. Like, no, like I like to go on election day, and he explained why, and I'm like, no, I appreciate that. Like, I totally understand. I'm like, I understand why you feel that way. So I'm like, that's fine. Like, I'm not like pushing people. Like, I go, no,
Right.
if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But then I try to just, I'll just explain briefly like the reasons. But again, it's just trying to introduce, because sometimes too, it takes some time for people. Takes time for people to absorb certain things and ideas where they're like, I mean, even for me, it took some time to like go, well, okay, this is the reality of the situation. What is the best
Mhm.
way to handle the reality of the situation? And
Yeah.
that's kind of it's been a progression for me as well. So and there may be people who are always going to be staunch, like, nope, like I'm not, and they may not even agree with it. I don't know. I don't know if Adrian's still watching. She may never agree with it, but I think there's a sincere effort. And actually, last night at the dinner, I was like, "Does everybody here like Laura Trump?" I think everybody here likes Laura Trump. So I'm like, and everybody's like,
Right.
"Woo!" I'm like, "Okay, good," because I'm like, she's all on board with this early voting. So, like, if you
Mhm.
don't believe
Well,
me,
and I want to go back to Adrian's comment because, philosophically, I agree with her
sure,
100%.
philosophically,
I am on board with
hmm
her on the idea there should only be an election day, not an election month, not an election
hmm
season. On principle, I agree with that 1000%. But, again, quoting Laura Trump there, you got to deal with the hand that you're dealt. And strategically, what is the best way that we can pivot to try to, like you said, bank your votes so that way you can stop the bleeding, the expenditures of mailers, ads, everything that are targeted to people when they've already voted, and it can go to those independents, the swing voters. Because here in Wisconsin, we're a state where any office statewide on up on the federal level are literally decided by what, 20, 25,000
yeah,
votes, sometimes less.
yeah. Sometimes I think in 2018, I think it was is it 18,000 for Brad Schimmel for the Attorney General. I think he lost by
I believe so.
18,000. And actually Amy, um, um,
Oh,
yeah, Laudenbach,
Laudenbach,
she lost by 7,000 against a long time. I mean, that was impressive. A long time.
that was,
That guy was on the
yeah.
ballot for 40 years or whatever, and she almost took him out.
I think Doug LaFollette came with the state capital. That's just my thought. I think
Yeah. So he's been
they
there.
built state capital
Yeah, so
around
you
him.
got to give her
That's
credit for coming so close, but that was 7,000 votes.
yeah.
So it can be, yeah, even less than 20,000. So that's where I posted on X, yes, or I think it was yesterday. I made the point that for like local races, and then I actually, Ed, I do have to go pretty soon, but
Yeah, I know. We said we were gonna do like 30,
yeah,
45
I know
minutes, and
that's
then
how
it's
that
like,
goes.
yeah,
We enjoy
here we are.
talking, and that's how that goes. But I posted on X that like for local elections, there's like sometimes 10 votes, 20 votes. And I
Hmm.
made the point that a city council candidate that I supported won by 3 votes a couple years ago.
Yep.
So 3 votes, she won by, thankfully she won, but it was 3 votes. So I said, don't tell me that your vote doesn't matter or that talking to voters doesn't matter. Those races are even closer. So, so I don't know.
Well, especially when you get into communities more like mine, and I think to a certain degree yours, where you have your population for your town or your village might be 3,000 people. Well, I got 2,500 people in my village. Half of them are inmates. So that only leaves, we got a medium security prison over here. That only leaves, what, 1,200
Yeah,
people, and not all of them are voting age. So it can be, it can make that much of a
right,
difference. Brian Shinning mentioned here 12 races in the last 24 years decided by less than 30,000 votes.
right.
Every vote
Yeah,
counts.
Wisconsin is it's that type of state. And so it's it's going to take some time or it's going to take sorry, my dog is like with me just a second.
That's all right. They're needy that way.
She distracted me a little bit. She was scratching at the door. But no, it's like, just to put things in perspective, like we can't, I mean, that's why I just put everything I have into every election, where I just know, like, I can't assume anything. I can't take anything for granted.
Yep.
It's so important to just reach as many people as possible. And, Brian mentioned we have to stop fighting the last war. I mean, we have to. I actually was reading something from Michael Watley, the new chair, and I really like what he had to say, because, I mean, I'm not going to share everything he said, but just like,
Yeah.
just being more sophisticated with things and updating things, and just, I mean, we have to fight the battle that, and like Laura Trump said, that we have to deal with the hand dealt us. And somebody actually, I was talking to in Brown County recently, made the point, like, if we're playing a football game and the rules change, well, are we going to play according to the rules that were before, or are we going to play to the new
Hmm.
rules? Like, if you have to make it 15 yards instead of 10 yards to get a first down, well, we can't keep trying to get 10 yards when we need to get 15. Like,
Right.
so I thought that was an interesting analogy that somebody brought up. And, so I think we just have to be smart. And, yeah, I get the frustration about some things, but again, I've always tried to be kind of pragmatic, while trying to stay true to what I believe, but also be practical if it calls for it, So
Right. Well, I mean, time only moves forward, and it's easy to sit here and get stuck on 22. It's easy to get stuck on 2020. But if you're stuck on that, I mean, what did you learn from it? That's
Mhm.
the bigger takeaway.
Exactly.
Did you learn something from it that you can apply going
100%.
forward, so that whatever misgivings happened in the past, you're not repeating them? Now, I want to get to this here, and then I want to get to Brian's comment here. But you sent me this, and I thought this is a really good resource. This
Yes.
is from the Eau Claire County Republican
Yep.
Party. Um, Here they are talking about the spring election. It's a spring election guide. I thought it was really fascinating because you can see where your ballot is, and that'll open your link to My Vote in Wisconsin. You can look by county. And so it covers everything from Adams all the way, Eau Claire, Jefferson, Lincoln, Pierce,
Doors on there too.
Waushara, Port, yeah, it's
Yep.
Door County. And, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this link and I'm going to put this in the chat room so
Perfect.
that people,
Yeah.
if you want to take a look at that later on. But let's take a look here. Brian's got a comment, and let's stop sharing that and we'll move to the comment. Brian mentions here we also have two disadvantages that most states don't: no party registration which dozens of states have. Yeah, with the open primaries and everything. Primary races both on the same ballot. We don't have people asking for a Republican or a Democrat primary ballot anymore. So we don't even know that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, and it's funny because we've seen a lot of that over this 24 election primary cycle. How many Democrats have crossed the aisle to vote for Republicans? How many Democrats have been caught on camera saying, yes, I voted for Nikki Haley? And think in New Hampshire in particular, the guy was being interviewed and he was point blank asked the question, in a race between Haley and Biden, who would you vote for? He didn't even think twice. Now, mind you, he just voted for Haley in the Republican primary. He said Biden. Didn't even skip a beat.
Sure. Yeah. So if you,
You
I
know,
mean, and the thing is too, like in our, I think most states, they do have party registration where for us trying to identify our voters, it's a little more tricky.
mhm.
And also we do have, I mean, I'm sure this is true in other states, but like, you know, we are a swing state where we do have that segment of voters who can go both ways.
That will
Yeah,
switch up.
so there's that
Absolutely.
too, but yeah, it's like as far as identifying voters, it's a little bit more challenging in our state for that reason.
Yeah.
So we have to go off of, um, for example, I mean, when I knock on doors and I ask people certain questions, like I can get in the system, like, okay, they typically this is an issue that's important to them, or this is how they typically vote, or they plan on voting for so and so, and so it updates into the
Right.
system where that can help enhance things. There's some consumer data in there. There's also people signing up on different websites. There's many different ways that we
Mhm.
can try to figure out who our voters are, but yeah, it's not just like, oh, they registered as a Republican, so that's easy, like
It
so
Yeah, that might have worked like 30, 40
yeah.
years ago,
Well, and
but,
I
the
mean,
the
other
data
states
mining operations provide so much more
yeah,
information these days.
in other states do have that. However, there there are a lot of sophisticated ways to, uh, figure out how people might vote just based on their well, and there's, I'll see it on my Facebook page where like,
Right.
"Oh, just looked that up, and now suddenly it's showing up in my feed." Like, I just looked it up.
That's the algorithm spying on you there.
Very funny, Brian. He says he'll stop now so I don't lecture him. Um, I don't think I'm in a place to lecture you, actually. I don't feel like I'm at that level, so I can lecture you.
She only does it recreationally and only on
Yeah.
weekends.
So,
Well, we are an hour and 15 minutes into the show
yeah,
here. And again, we said we were gonna
I
30 to
know that's
45, but
we're really
it was a
bad at
great
that.
conversation.
But
Oh,
it's
it
okay.
is
It
what
was
it
a good
is, you know?
conversation, and, I feel like there was a lot of good things discussed, and it's always I mean, I feel like we always have good back and forth and have a, like, substantive conversation, I feel like it's really, um it's useful to have these conversations, and so I appreciate you having me on, and it's been a long time. I haven't even done my own live in many months. I've just been so busy. So, um,
Well, and that's kind of where I've been because I mean, with everything that went on for me
yeah, you have
personally in
personal stuff too.
23,
So, yep,
it was pretty rough. And for the first month of the year, I didn't do anything. Like I was so just out of
sure,
it. And started getting back into the swing of things here early February. And now we're just going full stop. I mean, full board, nonstop,
sure,
right? Last week I did nothing. I was just one podcast after another on a couple other people's different platforms as well too. The week
sure.
before, pretty much the same thing, and just reaching out to various candidates because, I want to make sure to bring more content like this, speak with more individuals like yourself to elevate this
This
conversation
is important
so that
stuff.
people
Like, I
know.
actually like, I
Right.
was saying earlier, like, people getting involved in stuff, and this is one area that is important because if we're debating topics like this, I mean, we're trying to get to the heart of the matter and not just people
Mhm.
aren't just yelling at each other. Like when people like are typing, back and forth on things, like I mean,
Right.
sometimes you can have dialogue that way, but I feel like this is productive where, and then, if people want to chime in and say something in the comments, then we can bring that up and discuss, that. So,
Right.
so I think it's like a really good way to not only try to find answers and solutions, but I feel like the way you handle these interviews with different people is it's just I feel like it's unifying even if there's disagreement because of how it's handled.
Well, like I say, I mean, during the 22 cycle, I had interviews with Robin Voss, Adam Steen.
Mhm.
I've had
Yep.
interviews, this year with Adrian Melby, with Ali
Mhm.
Schweitzer,
Yep.
yourself. I'll talk with
Yep.
everybody. My goal is to have the conversation and put it out to people,
And
and
they can
you
make up
guys
their
take
mind.
what you will.
Yeah,
Right. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm just
sure.
here to have the conversation with people. And you know what? God willing, people will like and share and all the other good stuff that go along with that. And if you guys got more suggestions who I should have on, hit me up. Hit me up via DM and let's see if we can make that happen because I'm always open to having more conversations, more guests, and we'll just keep pumping out more content like
Yeah,
this here.
absolutely. Well, it's a good year there's probably plenty of people you could have on that there's no end of
Oh, it's gonna be
ideas.
lit.
Yeah, it's gonna be intense. It already is intense, but it's gonna get more intense as the months go by. So it'll be fun.
Well, we got the countdown to state convention in May, and then we
Yep.
have the national convention in
Yep.
July.
And
Man,
we're actually
I
I'm running to be a national delegate out of all things. I mean, I
really
yeah, I
now.
never planned on I know that sounds like I'm just saying that, whatever, but I really did not plan on it. And I figured,
Well, you'd be a good
well,
representation.
thank you. And yeah, I go, am I really doing this? Like, because I'm like, do I know what I'm
Like you need more to put on your plate. There you
yeah.
go.
Oh, Ed, there's your next guest. That was just a little nudge to make you
See, Brian and I actually talked before he went down to the meeting for when they were electing the
oh,
chair, and we're gonna talk a little bit more. And I definitely want to have Brian
yeah,
on
you'd
because
be
I
good to
want,
have on.
again, we want. Oh, Brian would be phenomenal. Brian, and I got to give a shout out to Brian Shimming, and there are going to be some people that are going to say something negative about it, but go ahead, whatever. No, I got to give a shout out to Brian because when I met him, this was I want to say I met Brian for the first time either in 20 or 21, and he actually knew who I was via my
Well,
podcast,
there you go.
which was kind of a little weird for me because it's like, oh damn, people, not just the average person, but people in the higher echelons here of the state, are paying attention. And during the 22 election cycle, you know, he always gave me a word of encouragement, always, gave me some suggestion. And I remember during the 22 election cycle, we were in the Milwaukee County Republican Party's picnic, and he's like, I really suggest you do like election night coverage.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I have to think about that. No, I really suggest you do that. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take that suggestion.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we
Yep.
did. So, again,
He's
thank
got a
you.
lot of
Thank you for,
experience, with he's done radio and a lot of just a
oh, yes.
diverse background of things. So, yeah, I mean, it's good I think he's got some good advice at times. So, I'm just teasing. I'm
She
totally
said at times, not me.
no,
I'm
I'm
not
just
involved in that one.
teasing. No, he's got a lot of good experience. So,
Yep. No doubt. All right, Stephanie, thank you so much for
yeah,
joining in here
appreciate it.
tonight. We got the website here, of course, which is wi.bankyourvote.com. And then, of course, people can always reach out to you. You are the chairperson for the Door County Republican Party as well,
Correct.
too.
Yes, and I'm the I'm the vice chair of the district, and currently the regional field director of RP or not RPW, regional field director for the 8th district for the Republican Party. So I'm wearing different hats, and it's crazy and it's been fun.
You're having so many titles added up here. I feel like this is an episode of Game of Thrones,
I've never
and I
seen an
guess
episode of Game of Thrones.
oh, you just look it up and,
Okay.
like, when they introduce the Khaleesi, it's like breaker of chains, mother of dragons, drinker of Mountain Dew. It's like,
Okay.
several titles,
You're like,
and
oh,
it's
come
just
on.
yeah, it's like, "Oh my god, can we get to the fight scene? Like, this is
Well,
ridiculous."
I'm curious.
Like, we know somebody's gonna die, and we know who she is. Do you have to put every title? That's just how they do it in High Valerian.
Well, what sounds the most, I mean, county chair actually is probably like, to me, that's probably like my favorite thing is just where it's at the local level and getting to deal with people in my own county.
Right.
And I even kind of joke, like, I actually really like being a volunteer. I mean, and it can be stressful, but I just, I don't know, there's something about being a volunteer and working with our other volunteers that there's just something really like special about people committing time and energy for free for a cause, you know? And so, and
Right.
it's for a good cause. So I actually, you know, I love that. Well, I say I love that role, but I mean, there's days where I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing?
That's the stress and
The
that
stress,
migraine
yeah,
coming into
but no,
play. But
it's been really a really cool experience too. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining in here,
thanks, Ed,
Stephanie. I really appreciate you. And as always, I always say, you help elevate the
and you do
conversation.
too, Ed. So
So thank you much. We'll have to do it again
yeah, I
soon.
appreciate it, and yeah, well, I'll definitely come on again. So
All right,
all right,
Stephanie.
you
Good
too.
night.
Talk to you later.
All right, that was Stephanie Soucek from Door County, and I'm going to give a shout out here to the folks that were in the chat tonight. I know we had Chairman RPW Chairman Brian Schimming in here tonight. We had Adrian Melby in there tonight. We had Ian C. Jordan in here tonight. So I'm going to thank you guys all for joining in here. For those of you guys that are following on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram. No, I'm not doing Instagram. I haven't done it. I'm still debating whether I'm going to do that or not. But of course, on Facebook Live here, I want to thank you guys for joining in here in the conversation. And of course, those of you that are watching in the archives. So we'll be back here on Tuesday night. We'll be doing another show. Not sure if we're going to have anyone on here or is it going to be another 2-hour monologue of my own. Anything's possible, but I still got a lot of things to do here tonight. I owe some people some phone calls that I just have not reached out to this past week. Been a very, very busy one with, of course, the normal JLB and getting things lined up. But we're going to have more content for you. So make sure you check out the website. That is the eddelgadoshow.com. And on that note, I want to thank you guys for joining here. Good night. God bless you. God bless the great state of Wisconsin. God bless America. I'm out.